I had stopped expecting anyone to ask me for anything but a spare key. That was the whole shape of my life for 6 years. Doors, mostly other people's, and the particular kind of trust a person hands a stranger when they say, "Can you make me a copy? I don't want to be locked out again." I'd built a business on that one sentence. I was good at doors. I was, by then, not especially good at anything that opened slower than a deadbolt. Then a woman moved into 4C with a moving truck. A chipped mug that said "World's Okayest Wife" turned label out in a box she hadn't meant to leave open, and a way of looking at a locked door like it had personally wronged her. And every rule I'd quietly built my whole adult life around got picked, one tumbler at a time, without her ever once trying the handle. I'm going to tell you about the ring in my coat pocket in a minute. First, you should know how a man who fixes locks for a living ended up, at 38, standing outside apartment 4C, with his own heart locked so tight even he'd lost the key. My name is Marcus Doyle. I run Doyle & Sons out of a storefront on Ashland. There is no son. There was only ever my father who started the shop, and I kept the name because taking it down felt like admitting he was really gone, and some griefs you just paint over instead of scraping off. I've been the Supers Go-To locksmith at the Kenmore Arms, a 9-story brick building on the north side, for 11 years. I know every unit's original hardware and half their secrets, because a locked door is where people keep both. Here's my wound, and I'll give it to you straight because dressing it up wastes both our time. I was engaged once, at 26, to a woman named Julia. Good years, mostly. Then her father got sick in Arizona, and she flew out to help, and she called me 8 weeks later. Not to break it off. That would have been cleaner. To tell me she'd realized, out there, in the desert, holding her father's hand through chemo, that she didn't want the life we'd built. Wanted something bigger. A city that wasn't Chicago. A man who wasn't quite so. She used the word settled, which is a soft word for what she meant. I flew out once, uninvited, to ask her to reconsider. She let me take her to dinner. She let me say everything I'd rehearsed on the plane, and at the end of it she reached across the table, took my hand kindly, the way you'd take a kid's hand crossing a street, and said, "Marcus, you already asked." I already answered. Asking twice doesn't change the answer, it just makes you smaller. I flew home and I never asked anyone anything again. Not really. Not the kind of asking that costs something. I dated, here and there, over the years, nice women, none of them wrong, exactly, just never quite worth the price of asking twice for anything. I got good at being easy to leave. If you never lean your weight on a door, it never has the chance to not open. My father used to say a lock only fails one of two ways. It gives up too easy, or it never gives at all. And a good locksmith respects both failures equally, because both of them started out as somebody trying to keep something safe. I didn't understand for a long time that he was talking about more than hardware. Grace Whitfield moved into 4C on a Tuesday in March, and I only know that because the super called me at 7 that morning about a jammed deadbolt on the unit. Original 1920s hardware, seized solid, and could I get over there before the new tenant's whole life sat in a U-Haul on Ashland Street, blocking the loading zone? She was standing in the hallway when I got there, arms crossed, staring at that door like it had insulted her family. Late 30s, dark blonde hair scraped back, a coat that cost more than my truck and shoes not made for standing in a hallway arguing with hardware. "It's not locked," she informed me before I'd said a word. "The key turns. It just doesn't open. I've tried for 20 minutes. I refuse to believe I'm defeated by a door on the first day of my new life." "That's a good line," I said. "Can I try?" "Be my guest." It hates me specifically, I think. It didn't hate her. The strike plate had swollen with a century of paint and Chicago winters, same as half the doors in that building. 90 seconds with a chisel and it swung open clean, and she looked at the open doorway like I'd performed a small resurrection. "That's it? 90 seconds?" 90 seconds and 40 years of the building settling wrong. You want the honest bill or the impressive one? Give me the honest one. I've had enough of the impressive kind lately. She said it light, like a joke, but something moved under it. fast, and was gone before I could be sure I'd seen it. She stuck out her hand. Grace, Marcus, Marcus, I would like it on record that I did not cry in this hallway, though the door and I came close to an understanding about it. Building's got a whole file on doors that make grown adults cry. You're in decent company. She laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, and I packed up my chisel and told myself that was the whole interaction, a jammed lock and a woman with good comebacks, and drove back to the shop, and did not think about her for at least 11 minutes, which for me, that year, counted as a landslide. Here's what I learned about Grace Whitfield over the following weeks, mostly from the super, Big Tom's, who runs that building like a beloved dictatorship and tells me everything whether I ask or not. She was 39, divorced 4 months, finalized after a year of separation, from a man named Craig, who'd been, by Tom's account, a whole different kind of trouble. She worked as a hospital administrator downtown, left before 7 most mornings, came home late most nights with the specific exhaustion of a person who runs other people's crises for a living, and has none of that energy left for her own. She had a sister, Bethany, who called every Sunday, loudly, audible through the wall of Unit 4D, where Tom's cousin lived, and reported the highlights. She kept the world's okayest wife mug. I saw it myself. The day I fixed her garbage disposal in April, sitting label out on an open shelf like a dare, and when she caught me looking at it, she said, "Flat. It's a reminder, not a keepsake," and changed the subject before I could ask which of those things it was a reminder of. She called me more than the door probably warranted that spring. The garbage disposal. A window that stuck. A ceiling fan with a wobble that kept her up nights. I want to be honest, some of those calls were genuine problems in a 100-year-old building, and some of them, I came to understand much later, were a woman testing whether a man would keep showing up for small, dull, unremarkable problems before she risked him on a large one. I always came. Same day, mostly, she started leaving coffee out for me. "So you stopped drinking that gas station tar," she said, the first time. And I started staying 20 minutes past the fix, then 40, sitting on her one good chair while she unpacked another box, both of us talking around the actual questions the way two careful people do. "So what happened?" she asked me once, straight out, no warning, elbow deep in a box of books. "Everybody's got the thing. What's yours?" I told her about Julia, the desert, the dinner, the kind hand across the table. Asking twice doesn't change the answer, it just makes you smaller. Grace went still with a book in her hand. That's a horrible thing to say to someone. It was true, though. It was true and horrible. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Marcus. That's sort of the worst kind of true. She set the book down carefully, like it deserved better than to be handled while she was thinking something over. "So you just stopped asking." Efficient use of a lesson. That's not efficient. That's a life sentence you gave yourself for someone else's crime. She said it quiet, but it landed like a dropped wrench, and I didn't have an answer for it. Because nobody had ever said it back to me that plainly before. She didn't offer her own thing that day. It took longer, hers, and I understood by May not to reach for it. I just kept showing up for the small stuff and letting the big stuff wait its turn. The way you don't force a swollen strike plate, you work the frame until it gives on its own schedule, not yours. Late May, she showed up at the shop on Ashland. First time she'd ever come to my turf, instead of the other way around. Holding a cardboard box of old keys she'd found in a drawer when she bought the place. A dozen of them. Tarnished. None labeled. No idea what any of them opened. "I thought you'd want the mystery," she said, setting the box on my counter like evidence. "Or maybe I just wanted an excuse to see where you disappear to. That's most of what I do here. Guess mysteries." I turned one over. Old, ornate, definitely not from the Kenmore Arms. This one's 100 years older than your building. Somebody's grandmother's jewelry box, maybe. Or a steamer trunk. "Can you find out?" I could. Might take a while. Some locks want to stay guessed at. She wandered the shop while I sorted them, running a finger along the wall of hanging blanks, the drawers of pin tumblers, my father's old bench still set up exactly as he'd left it, Tools hung in the outline he'd drawn himself so nothing ever went missing. "You kept his outline," she said, quiet, standing over it. 12 years. Never moved a thing. That's either very touching or extremely concerning. Locksmith. And I genuinely can't tell which. Both? Probably. Ask me again in a decade. She picked up one of his old chisels, weighed it in her hand the way you'd weigh something that mattered to someone once. "My grandmother had a shop like this. Not locks, she reupholstered furniture out of a garage in Rockford. I used to sit under whatever chair she was working on and watch fabric fall like curtains. She set the chisel down, careful, exactly where she'd found it, which I noticed, and which mattered more than she probably knew. I haven't thought about that in years. This place does that to a person, apparently. Occupational hazard. People come in for a key and leave remembering their whole childhood. I should charge extra." "You should," she said, and smiled at me over the counter in a way that had nothing careful left in it, just for a second, before the usual guard came back up. But I'd seen it, and I carried that unguarded second around with me for days like a good coin in a pocket. I found what one of the keys opened, eventually, a cedar box, sold at an estate sale decades back, still in a downtown antique shop 2 blocks from her hospital. She went and looked at it on her lunch break and didn't buy it. Some mysteries earn the right to stay mysteries, she told me after, echoing my own words back at me, which she did constantly, and which I never once minded. June gave us the rooftop. The Kenmore Arms has a tar paper roof access nobody uses except Tom's for the pigeon situation, and as it turned out, Grace, who'd found the door unlocked one evening, I'd fixed that lock too, ironically. Badly, apparently. Which I choose to believe was on purpose by some part of me that doesn't lie even when the rest of me does. I came up one night to check a rattling vent and found her sitting against the parapet with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, like she'd been expecting company, though she swore she hadn't. "There's an extra glass," I pointed out. "I bought 2 because the store had a deal. Don't read into my wine. I'm reading into your wine a little. Sit down, locksmith. The city looks decent from up here if you squint past the billboard." We sat against warm tar paper with the skyline doing its show, and she poured, and for a long while we didn't say much, which by then had become its own kind of conversation between us. Then she asked about my father, and I told her about the shop, and the name I couldn't take down, and she listened the way hospital administrators must learn to listen, fully, no fidgeting, filing every word somewhere useful. "You keep his name up," she said, "and you keep his rule about locks. The give up too easy one. Do you know which one you are? Which failure?" I thought about it honestly. Maybe for the first stretch of years I'd let myself actually feel it. Never gives it all. That's me. Locked so tight nothing gets in or out, and I call it strength. And your father would say that's a failure too. Yeah. She turned her wine glass by the stem, watching the city, and said, "Quiet. I was the other kind. Gave up too easy. Bent every single time somebody leaned on me, for 11 years, until there wasn't a straight part left to bend. She wasn't looking at me. That's the marriage, if you want the short version. I bent until I didn't recognize the shape of myself anymore, and then I got mad about it, which apparently was unforgivable. You don't have to tell me the rest tonight. I know I don't." She looked over, and there was something almost grateful in it, that I hadn't pushed. That's sort of the whole problem, Marcus. You're the first person in 2 years who's asked me things and then let me not answer them. Craig used to ask me things like it was a countdown, 3 seconds or the conversation's a fight. She drank. Anyway. Not tonight. Whenever, I said, and meant it. And we sat up there till the wine ran out, and I want you to know that was the night I understood I was in real trouble. The kind that cost something. The kind I'd spent 12 years engineering my whole life to avoid. July, she told me the rest, on her own schedule, the way I'd learned by then to let her. We were on the rooftop again. It had become our place, unofficially the way places do, and she'd had a bad week at the hospital, something about a patient's family that she wouldn't detail, And she was quieter than usual, and finally she just started talking, staring at the skyline instead of at me. Which I'd come to understand was how she said the true things. Craig had an affair for 2 years before I found out, she said. 2 years, Marcus. Not a slip. Not a bad month. A whole second life, with a woman named Renee from his firm. Apartment and everything, 20 minutes from ours, and I never once suspected, because I was too busy being a good wife to notice I'd become a good fool. Her jaw worked. I found out because Renee called our house. Not by accident. On purpose. She wanted me to know. She'd gotten tired of being the secret, so she made me the one who found out instead of the one who was told. Which I have thought about more than is probably healthy, that even his mistress got tired of him before I did. Grace, I'm not done. Let me finish once and then I won't do this again. Her voice was steady, the trained calm kind, the kind you'd use delivering bad news to a family in a hospital hallway. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was after. He cried, real tears, said he'd end it, said I was the one he wanted. And I believed him. Because I'd bent that direction so many times it was just muscle memory. 6 more months of a marriage where I checked his phone and he swore innocence, and Renee was still very much in that apartment 20 minutes away the entire time. He proposed to me twice. You know that? Once at 26. Real. Before any of it. And once again during those 6 months, on one knee in our kitchen with a fresh bouquet, begging me to renew our vows, like a rug you can just relay over rot. She finally looked at me. I said yes the second time too. God help me. And 3 weeks after that, I found the second phone. The city hummed below us. I didn't say anything, because some silences are the only correct response. So here's my thing. The thing you asked about in May and I wasn't ready to give you, she said. I don't think anyone gets asked twice, Marcus. Not really. Not the true kind of asking. Craig asked me twice, and both times it was a performance, not a promise. And I've decided that's just what asking twice means. A man buying time, or covering tracks, or needing you to say yes again because the first yes didn't hold. My mother says I'm bitter. I think I just finally learned to read the fine print. She wrapped her arms around her knees, small in a way I'd never seen her be. I like you. I want you to know that plainly, because I'm done being unclear with people and calling it politeness. I like you more than I've let myself say. But I am 39 years old, divorced, and I have decided, really decided, not sad decided, that no one proposes to a divorced woman twice, and by twice I don't mean my own marriage. I mean generally, structurally, the way the world's built. First marriage, sure, everybody's optimistic. Second time around, a man wants easier math. A woman who hasn't already proven she can be walked out on. I'm not spiraling, I promise you. I'm just telling you the shape of the fence before you decide whether you want to keep leaning on it. That's not a fence, I said. That's a eulogy you're delivering for something that hasn't died yet. She almost smiled. That's a very locksmith thing to say. I fix things people gave up on because the last guy who touched them did it wrong. I don't know anything else to be good at. August was when Craig came back into it, and I should tell you plainly that Grace never once invited him. Because that matters. He showed up at the Kenmore Arms on a Thursday evening in a suit that had cost even more than his ex-wife's coat. Flowers in hand, the specific flowers, white peonies, I found out later, her favorite, information a man only keeps if he's planning to use it as a key. Tom's buzzed him in without checking, because Tom's is a romantic and a fool in roughly equal measure, and Craig was standing outside 4C when I came up the stairs with a new deadbolt for the unit 2 doors down. You must be the locksmith, Craig said, looking me over the way you'd price a used car. Tom's mentioned. Grace hires a lot of help lately. Marcus, Craig, he didn't offer his hand. I'm here to talk to my wife. Ex-wife, I said. And she's not home from work yet. I know her schedule better than you'd think. He smiled, the kind of smile built for boardrooms, not hallways. I've been doing some thinking. Marcus, marriage is the hardest job there is. I failed at it. I'll own that. I've done the work. I've been in therapy 11 months. But I don't think failing once means you don't know how to fix it. I think it means you finally understand the assignment. He glanced at the door. Renee and I ended in the spring, for what it's worth. Turns out I wasn't looking for a new life. I was looking for the old one, minus the parts I'd broken. I'd like the chance to unbreak them. That's between you and her. It is. He looked at me steady, and here's the part that stuck with me. Because it wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was reasonable sounding. But you should know what you're standing next to. Locksmith. 11 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate because a man makes one very human mistake. She'll tell you she's over it. She's not over it. She's exhausted from it, which looks the same from outside but isn't. And when the exhaustion wears off, and it will, therapy or not, she is going to want the life she actually built. The house we almost bought in Lincoln Park. The friends who took her side but still invite me to things because 11 years doesn't unwind on a legal document. You'll get the interesting years. I'll get the rest. He held up the peonies, almost gentle about it. I'm not your enemy. I'm just the man who knows where the bodies are buried in this particular yard, and I'm telling you kindly, there's more of them than you think. I didn't have a smart answer for that. I still don't, fully, except that a man who can describe his own cruelty that calmly, that fluently, has had a great deal of practice being forgiven for it. Grace came up the stairs 11 minutes later, saw the peonies, saw both our faces, and went the particular still I'd learned meant a storm building behind a calm front. Craig, she said, you need to leave. I brought your favorites. I know what you brought. I know exactly what you always bring. That's the whole problem. You're excellent at bringing things, and terrible at staying for what comes after. Her voice didn't rise. It went colder instead, which was worse. 11 months of therapy, and the first thing you do is show up unannounced with flowers and a speech for a man you've never met, instead of calling me. Like a person who respects a boundary. That's not growth, Craig. That's the same move with a new coat of paint. I love you, he said, simply, like it settled things. I know you do. In whatever way you're capable of. I'm not questioning the love, Craig. I'm questioning the arithmetic, and you just did it again. Standing in my hallway, doing my arithmetic for me, telling this man what he's really standing next to. You don't get to narrate my life to my own doorstep anymore. That job's mine. She held the door to 4C open, cold and final. Take the flowers. I have a vase and I'm not using it on you twice. He left. Eventually, gracefully, in the way that men like Craig always manage to leave, like the loss was somehow noble. Somehow his to be dignified about. The peonies went in Tom's trash chute, personally, by Grace's own hand, and she came back up to where I was still standing with a deadbolt in a paper bag. Useless. Forgotten. I'm sorry, she said. That was a lot to witness. He's not wrong about one thing, I said, before I could stop myself. There probably is a version of your life where the interesting years were his, and the rest is mine. I don't know how to promise you that's not true. Marcus. She looked at me, tired in a new way, a scraped clean way. I didn't ask you to promise me the arithmetic doesn't exist. I asked you, back in May, without asking, to just keep showing up for the boring parts. You've done that for 5 months. He did it for 11 years and then stopped the second it got hard. I know which math I trust. I just don't know if I trust myself to bet on it out loud again. She pressed her fingers to her eyes. Hard. Once. I need some time. Not from you. From all of it. Can you give me that without disappearing? I've got nowhere else to be, I said. I never really did. That was the whole problem. She almost laughed, wet and small, and went inside. And I stood in that hallway a long while with a deadbolt I never installed, and the smell of peonies fading out of the stairwell, and I thought about my father's rule. And I understood, finally, fully, which failure I'd spent my whole adult life mistaking for strength. 3 weeks of quiet followed. Not cold, she still waved from the hallway. Still texted about a leaking pipe in September that I fixed in 20 silent minutes while she stood in the next room pretending to work. But careful, the way you are with something you're not sure has finished healing. I gave her the space she'd asked for, because I'd promised, and because some things you don't fix by leaning harder on the frame. I want to tell you what I did instead, because it matters to how this ends. I called Julia. I hadn't spoken to her in 12 years, found her through a mutual friend from the old days, and I'm not proud of how nervous I was dialing a number I half expected to be dead. She picked up on the third ring, older sounding, kind, married now, 2 kids, living outside Denver. Marcus Doyle, she said. Well, this is either an emergency or a very late apology. Neither, I think. I've carried something you said to me for 12 years, and I wanted to ask you about it instead of just carrying it. Go ahead. You told me asking twice doesn't change the answer, just makes a man smaller. I sat with the phone against my ear in an empty shop, tools hanging silent on the wall behind me. I built my whole life around that sentence, Julia. I want to know if you still believe it. She was quiet a moment. God, Marcus. I was 26 and terrified and trying to make a clean break feel less cruel by dressing it up as wisdom. I don't think I believed it even then. I think I needed you to stop trying so I could stop feeling guilty about leaving. A pause, gentler, asking twice isn't smaller, Marcus. It's just honest about what the first time cost you. Please tell me you haven't spent 12 years treating my worst month as scripture. I might have. Then go undo it, she said. Immediately. With whoever made you call me. And I could hear, even over the phone, that she was smiling, and I thanked her, and hung up, and stood in that quiet shop a long time with my father's whole rule finally making complete sense. October, Grace's birthday, which I only knew because Tom's cousin in 4D knew everything and told everyone. I didn't plan what happened that night. I want that on the record too, because the good things in my life have mostly arrived exactly like this. Not staged, just true, arriving on their own schedule the way a swollen door finally gives. I climbed to the roof around 8 with a bottle of the same cheap wine she'd bought that first night, meaning only to say happy birthday and go. And she was already up there. Alone, sitting against the parapet in the October cold, with her coat pulled tight and her face turned toward the skyline, and something about the set of her shoulders told me the day had been harder than a birthday should be. You're not supposed to be up here without me, I said. Building code. I checked. She turned, and her eyes were wet, and she wiped them fast, embarrassed. I'm having a stupid night. 39 felt like a milestone this morning, and turned into a eulogy by tonight. I keep doing the math Craig started for me. The interesting years, the boring years. I hate that he put a number on it and I can't stop running it. I sat down next to her, close, and poured 2 glasses, and for a while we just watched the city do its usual quiet magic trick with the dark. I called someone tonight, I said. Before I came up here. Who? Julia. She went still. The desert one. The asking twice one. That one. I turned my glass slow by the stem, the way I'd watched her do 100 times by then. I asked her if she still believed what she told me. She said she never really did. Said she was 26 and scared and needed an excuse that sounded like wisdom instead of cruelty. I looked over at her. I've spent 12 years treating one woman's worst month like it was the whole truth about love, Grace, and I think you've spent 2 years doing the same thing with Craig's arithmetic. I think we've both been living inside somebody else's bad math. That's a nice thought. It doesn't make the math wrong, though. Statistically, I don't want to talk about statistics, I said. I want to talk about the actual thing, which is that you are the first person in 12 years I have wanted to ask for anything, and I've been circling it since March. Being real careful, being real patient, because I know exactly how it feels to have someone lean on a door before it's ready to open. But it's ready. Grace, I'm ready. I've been ready since the rooftop in June, and I was too scared of my own rule to say so. Her hands had gone still around her glass. Marcus, I'm not done. You get the boring version tonight, no rooftop poetry, because this is too important to dress up. I set my glass down on the tar paper, careful, and turned to face her fully. You told me in August that no one proposes to a divorced woman twice, that the world's built that way. First marriage. Everybody's optimistic. Second time around, a man wants easier math. A woman who hasn't already proven she can be left. And I've thought about that sentence every day for 2 months. And I want you to hear me say, clearly, with nothing performed about it, that's not a law of the world. Grace, that's Craig's fine print, and you've been reading it like it's yours. Marcus, what are you? I'm getting to it. Give me the whole minute. You've given me 5 months of small repairs. You can give me 1 minute for the big one. My hands weren't steady, which felt right, because nothing that costs anything should feel steady. You said no one proposes twice, so here's what I've decided, and I decided it a while ago. I've just been carrying the question in my coat pocket, waiting for the right door to open. I stood, came around in front of her, and got down on one knee on cold tar paper under a Chicago sky, and pulled a small box out of my jacket, and her hand flew to her mouth. And the whole city seemed to go quiet to watch, or maybe that was just my own heartbeat drowning it out. Grace Whitfield, I said, I am asking you. Not performing, not covering tracks, not buying time. Asking. The true kind. The kind that costs something and I'm paying it gladly. I know I'm not your first proposal. I know the math says I shouldn't be doing this, that the smart move is easier, newer, less complicated than a woman who's already been left standing in a kitchen once. I don't want easier. I want you. Divorced, careful, exhausted, not over it, all of it. The whole complicated true version. Not some uncomplicated stranger who never had to learn what you're worth the hard way. So, no one proposes to a divorced woman twice, you said. I'd like to be the first man in your life who proves that sentence was never a rule. It was just a room you hadn't left yet. Marry me, Grace, not to unbreak anything. To build something that was never broken in the first place. Because it's new. Because it's ours. Because I finally understood which kind of lock I've been my whole life. And I chose. Tonight, on purpose, to give. The city held its breath. Or I did. Same thing up there. She was crying properly now, both hands over her mouth, and for one long terrible second she didn't move at all, and I knelt there on cold tar paper with my whole chest exposed to the October air and thought, with a strange calm, well, Marcus, you asked. Whatever comes next, you asked. Then she came down onto her knees too, right there in front of me, so we were level, her hands taking my face, and she said, wrecked and laughing and crying all at the same time, yes. Yes. Obviously. Yes. And Marcus, for the record, for all of history, I take it back. Every word of it, I retract the entire sentence, and I kissed her before she could finish retracting it. Because some sentences deserve to be interrupted by exactly the thing they said couldn't happen. We got married in April, on the rooftop. Because, where else? Tom's officiated. Turns out he's ordained online. Has been for years. For emergencies, he said. Which tells you everything about Tom's. Julia sent a card from Denver that just said, go undo it properly this time. Congratulations, and Grace keeps it on the shelf. Craig, for the record, moved to Milwaukee that winter. Bethany reports, through the wall, through Tom's cousin, through the whole efficient gossip network of that building, that he's dating someone new. Someone he's apparently already proposed to once. We wish them both the actual thing, not the performance of it. I mean that. My father would have wanted me to mean it. The mug still sits on Grace's shelf, our shelf, now, in the apartment we knocked through to combine with mine, 4C and 4B made into one wider life, which took a great deal of very satisfying demolition. World's okayest wife, label out. She won't get rid of it. It's not a keepsake, she told me, the first week we lived together, catching me looking at it again. It's a reminder. I told you that back in April. A reminder of what? Exactly? You never did finish that sentence. She came and stood beside me, and looked at the mug a long moment, and slid her hand into mine. That I survived being someone's okay wife, she said. So I'd recognize it. Completely. The day I became someone's whole yes. I keep the ring box on my father's old workbench now. Empty. Next to the tools. Every so often a customer asks about it, and I tell them the short version, that a good lock doesn't fail by giving up too easy or never giving at all. It fails by forgetting which one it's supposed to be. For which person, at which door. I found mine at 4C, on a Tuesday in March, with a swollen strike plate and a woman who refused to be defeated by a door on the first day of her new life. I never was defeated by it either. Neither of us were, in the end. We just needed the same 90 seconds, and 40 years of settling wrong worked loose at last.